So welcome everybody to the first Ask Us Anything or AUA video for the 2014 edition of the Epidemics MOOC, the Dynamics of Infectious Disease. And so this is the 7 out of 8 of the faculty who are involved in producing this course. Marcel Salate is away from campus this year, but he's still very active online and is going to be answering questions on the forum. What we'd like to do is every single week we get to harvest some of the great questions that we're getting through the discussion forums and put them to the faculty and have us answer those questions for you. And this year we're going to be adding a new feature where every week from this point on we're going to be bringing in a subject matter expert from around the Penn State community to answer some of your questions. So there were a lot of great questions this week, but some of them we're going to hold off until later on in the course when we can actually have a specific subject matter expert come in and address those questions explicitly. But just to introduce everybody, I wanted to go around the circle and have each one of us introduce where we came from and a question that many of you were asking, which is, why are we interested in this? Why did we become infectious disease biologists? And so I'll introduce myself quickly. My name is Matt Ferrari. I work here at Penn State. I'm an assistant professor of biology, and I love the numbers of infectious diseases. I like how populations go up and down and understanding the mechanisms behind those and applying mathematical and computational tools to studying those. And infectious diseases are constantly changing and the numbers are constantly fluctuating, and I like trying to understand those processes.
I'm Rachel Smith. I'm an associate professor of communication arts and sciences, and I'm a quantitative social scientist. So my intersection with this group is when the non-pharmaceutical things are needed. That's where I enter the table with behavior change and trying to predict why talking to somebody, that message is going to make an impact with one person and why it won't with another. My connection with infectious disease is some of the commonalities of contagion. So the contagious messages have a lot of commonalities with the contagion sorts of properties we think about with infectious disease. And it's a very exciting place to think about things like behavior change and the impact they can have.
My name is David Hughes, and I'm an assistant professor of entomology and biology. And I also study behavior, but I study it from the perspective of parasites that invade their hosts, and sometimes, rarely in all the parasites which exist, some parasites control that behavior. So I'm interested in how the adaptive control of behavior facilitates the transmission of these parasitic organisms. I typically work on ant societies and mostly work in rainforests.
I'm Andrew Reid. I'm a professor of biology and entomology here. I'm an evolutionary ecologist who works on infectious diseases, mostly malaria and a couple of viruses in agricultural and wildlife settings. I got into infectious disease because I can't remember a time where I wasn't interested in evolution. Evolution is science's answer to the meaning of life, and so it's intrinsically interesting. When I discovered that you could study it in real time and in a context that really mattered, which is an infectious disease, I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
My name is Ottar Bjørnstad, and I did all my studies and grew up in Norway, in my native land. And there I studied population fluctuations and outbreak of rodents. And then during my postdoctoral year in Santa Barbara, I realized that a lot of the mathematical and computational tools that we use to think about fluctuations in animal populations are actually very applicable to infectious diseases. And so, I guess about 15 years ago, I switched my focus to work on the population dynamics of infectious diseases, which is probably the most interesting area to study of everything in the world.
My name is Peter Hudson. I'm a professor in biology, and when I was an undergraduate I did everything I possibly could not to study diseases or parasitology. What I really wanted to study was the cool trophic interactions between lions and the wildebeest on the Serengeti, and to get involved with that. But I started investigating fluctuations in animal numbers known as population cycles. I was a wildlife biologist, and I discovered that disease was driving these cycles. And since then, I've been fascinated by the disease and this wonderful intimate duality that the disease have with their hosts. And like these guys, fascinated by how the diseases spread, the transmission events. And now I'm working on emerging diseases, spillover processes, how diseases invade new host populations, but doing this using wildlife mostly.
And I'm Mary Poss. I'm a professor of biology and veterinary and biomedical sciences here at Penn State. I'm a veterinary pathologist, so that puts me right in the middle of infectious disease. And I've been so for quite a long time, but my research is actually more aligned from the I work with viruses, and it's more aligned from the virus perspective than the host perspective. We're very interested in how viruses can adapt quite quickly to changes in their host environment. And as you've seen, there's a lot of scales that have been touched on here. We have worked much more on within host dynamics, but of course, love to work with folks like these who can crunch some numbers and consider how large population dynamics can also affect how viruses evolve and adapt.